Today we are going to be working with the Let's Party collection from Echo Park. So we're going to be using the collection kit, which has 12 pattern papers, a sticker sheet, and then we're also going to be working with the ephemera. So we are making 6 pages today because I really love all the paper, and this is the kind of topic that you can make a lot of pages with. So we are going to be using 11 out of the 12 pages plus 6 sheets of cardstock. Okay, so we're going to be using 3 black, 2 pink from the Echo Park collection, and then 1 sheet from Basil called Navajo. I think that's what it's called. It'll be linked in the description below. So when I'm going to pick the pages, we are only going to be putting one to the side, and I chose to put off that journaling cards one because I want to use some of those journaling cards on my pages. So I eliminated that one right off the hop, and now we have to use all the remaining sheets of paper. So first off here, I am going to separate off my background pages. So these are the pages that are not as good on both sides. So the back side, I know for sure I can't use for anything, so I'm gonna use those for sure as my background pages, as the base to my pages. So some of the things I didn't like about these pages on the back side were either that they were like journaling cards or borders, or sometimes they were just for a color that I didn't appreciate. So here are the accent pages for all of our 6 pages. I of course like the striped paper, especially for some of the narrower strips that we're going to be cutting. And then the rest of these sheets here, what I loved about them is that they look great on both sides and they have the colors that I want to choose to work with. Some of them are more plain, some of them are more colored, and then some of them have a lot of words on them. So that's kind of how I went through and picked my paper for this collection. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Let's get started. We have cutting diagrams in my tutorial videos, and I just kind of want to let you know how to read them. So there's the number in top in inches, and that's going to be the size that we're going to cut that cut piece into. And there's a number below it in a circle. So a lot of the times we're making 4 pages or 6 pages when we're using these cutting diagrams, and all these cut pieces can sort of get very disorganized. So that number inside of the circle there represents a pile that you're going to put that cut piece into. So for a 4-page tutorial, we're going to make 4 piles, and for a 6-page tutorial, we're going to make 6 piles. So the numbers are going to be either 1 through 4 or 1 through 6. So page 1 is going to have all the cut pieces that have a circle with the number 1 inside, and so on for the 4 or 6 pages. So now we're going to go ahead and take all pieces of our cardstock, and we are going to cut 1 inch in, 1 inch from the top, and 1 inch from the bottom, and we're going to make a straight line on all 4 sides of each of these pieces of cardstock. What we're basically doing is cutting a 10 by 10 inch square out of the center of this piece of cardstock. The border is going to be put into our pile, and the center, the 10 by 10 inch center, is going to be put to the side, and we're going to be cutting it with another cutting diagram as soon as we're done cutting out all of these squares. Now we're going to go ahead and cut the backgrounds for our pages. So we are going to be cutting the barcode strip off along with 1/2 inch and then 1/2 inch on the other side. So we're going to be making an 11.5 inch by 11.5 inch square for all of our background papers. I noticed after I changed the direction that I was cutting this paper, so make sure that the writing is going through the cutter the way that I showed on the screen. The only strip that you cut that doesn't really matter is a 0.75 inch strip, because that piece we're using the back side of it. So the writing needs to be going crossways on some of those longer pieces. So on this page here, I noticed that there was just too much white in the backgrounds for all of these papers. So I went ahead and decided to pop up that long strip just to create a shadow on the page. If you don't want to pop it up, but you kind of want to have it more shadowed, what I would recommend is inking the edges of that paper in a coordinating color, so like the pink or the green or even black if you want to. But what I would do then is probably ink the edges of all 3 of those accent papers that go on top of the Celebrate paper. So these 3x4 photo areas, because the green paper is also 3x4 inches, your 3x4 photos will have to be trimmed down just so you can see the edges in the background. So I just trim them by like 1/2 inch on either side. So on this page here, I have these photo areas that are, I believe, like 2.5 inches wide. And if you don't have 3 pictures, because I know that's an odd size, so if you don't have 3 pictures that you want to put there, you could easily put a 5x7 picture there instead. Now we're going to go ahead and get started with our embellishments. So what I like to do is take my ephemera and spread it, just because that way, like, you know, you see the sizes of everything and you kind of just see what you all have to work with. We also have our spare piece of cardstock, which is black this time. So if we need extra mats, we've got them there. We have our sticker sheet and our journaling cards. What I love about the journaling cards is that there are some like journaling areas, and there's also some journaling areas in the ephemera, so I really appreciate having that. And for tools, all we need is some foam tape, adhesive, and our scissors. Again, like, I really like to keep everything simple. It's very easy to get overwhelmed. I remember being at a point with my scrapbooking years ago, and whenever I would sit down, it was supposed to be like relaxing and it was supposed to be me time. And I would sit down in my room full of stuff. And I remember thinking, where do I start? And it doesn't matter if you're working full time or if you have little kids that you just put to bed or whatever you have going on in your life. The last thing you want to do when you sit down and have some me time is to feel like you have to put out all this mental energy. And you feel like you have to, you know, sort of, it shouldn't be this big process. And that's where I started to get really overwhelmed, because in my scrapbooking room, I had so many products that were non-consumable that added up and added up and added up. I had a stamping area, I had a Cricut area, I had a Big Shot area, I had die cuts, I had die cutting stuff, I had stamps, I had all these Cricut cartridges and punches, and like I had all these tools that like did sort of like the same thing. I had different versions of ways of making circles or making squares, and it got to this point where it's like you sat down and you spent a whole evening and didn't even get a page done because there was just this endless amount of options. And it became so overwhelming. And I actually quit scrapbooking because of that. Because it was just too much. And I thought, I'm just going to do digital now. I don't need all this stuff. And I'm not really a minimalist, but I definitely am not comforted by having a lot of things. So I actually sold a bunch of my stuff. And I said, I'm just going to do digital. But there was, like, years later, there was just this calling for it again. And there's just something about working with paper and working with things and just actually physically doing it and not sitting at a computer that makes it so relaxing and so enjoyable. And you have something that you can physically see and touch. And I really, really do appreciate that. But I knew that coming back to it, I wanted to find a way to make it really, really simple. And that's sort of why I built on this foundation of what I had done earlier with my cutting guide and with some of the principles of using up product and then being like using a product and then being done with it. You know, I accumulated so much paper over the years that I just ended up not using. And I always told myself, like, for an example, for Halloween, I would make one page or two with all this product I would buy, and I would tell myself I'll use more of it next year. But next year, I really loved like the new Halloween stuff. So I went out and bought that. And then I felt guilty about not using what I bought last year. So I ended up with all of this stuff accumulating, and I ended up with guilt about not using it and having it sit there and buying new stuff. So I told myself, if I'm going to make pages again, I am going to use a kit that I buy to its fullest potential, get the most value out of it that I possibly can, and I can walk away from that kit knowing that I left only a bunch of scraps. And if I did leave anything, I was going to leave things that were practical and things that I could use, like journaling cards or little bits and pieces of embellishments. And I like that, the idea that I don't have to go back to that I'm done with it. There's like this closure about it, about not having this stuff stack up and stack up and stack up. And that really was sort of the foundation for why I wanted to create this channel and the system that I have working with it. So I hope that, you know, maybe I'm just the only person that feels that way, but I really do hope that maybe if someone else feels the same way I do, a little bit overwhelmed or, you know, feeling like guilty about having all this stuff accumulate, I just hope that maybe someone can get some inspiration to pull out that stuff again or to scrapbook, even though it doesn't have, you know, knowing that it doesn't have to be hard. So I knew that I wanted to use this happy birthday banner on this page just because it had a very linear area on the page that would work for this banner. And like it's a good way to use this banner without using it in the corner of the page or the top of the page. So I wasn't 100% sure about using this journaling card on this page just because the birthdays are very similar, like with the balloons, but the embellishments that I wanted to use on this page were actually the little puppy balloons. So I figured to stick with the whole balloon thing, we could pull it off. And the pink did match some of the pink in the background. So I kind of moved past it. But if it does bother you, you definitely don't have to put it there. I popped up the pink off of the black cardstock. So the pink is raised, but the black isn't. Okay. Everything else is also popped up with foam tape on this page. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm taking this frame and I'm using it behind this cake that I'm going to pop up with foam tape. And I do that a lot. Like, I love taking frames and layering it behind another embellishment. And then I usually like to add something linear to it, like this Celebrate embellishment that I'm going to be putting on it. I love doing that. I think it's like kind of like one of my go-to things. So that's another little tip. Like, when I'm buying coordinating accessories, I look for certain things. So I look for frames like that have an opening and I can layer behind other stuff. I also look for journaling areas. So if there are journaling cards or if there are like ephemera pieces or anything that has a journaling area like that circle, I love that as well because it saves me so much work later when I'm in the journaling phase of making my card. I don't have to create a journaling area, which is like a process and it's work. So that saves us a lot of time. And I also, when I'm looking for accessories for pages, I look for variation in sizes. So I like things that are smaller and bigger because you can cluster them and they seem to work better together. So I really love embellishments that vary in size, have journaling areas, and have frames. So here I really felt like this photo was gonna need to have a little bit more, it was gonna have to stand out more. So I just put this black photo mat on just to kind of make it stand out on its own a little bit. I also popped up this big element here. And the reason why I chose this element is because it was big, it was gonna cover that big area, but the Hooray banner also matches the background sheet, the background paper. So then what I went ahead and did there is just clustered another group of embellishments at the bottom. There isn't really a lot of room here to do any kind of journaling or titles, but you certainly don't have to put that celebrate area, or you don't have to put as big of an embellishment there underneath the two 4x6 photos if you want to have more of a journaling area. I just find sometimes when you have this many pages, sometimes it's just about, you know, capturing more of the moments that happened at an event, and it's not necessarily about having to re-talk about something always. So not all of my pages I feel need to have journaling. A lot of them can just have an area to put a date or something simple like that. This page is interesting in its own way, even though it's kind of one of the more plainer pages. I love that I chose to use the striped background here. Even though it's busy, it's different enough that the rest stands out on it. So this celebrate journaling card here just wasn't going to be the right color, and it was too busy. So I decided to take a journaling card that I wasn't using and just flip it over, because on the back side of those journaling cards was this really bright, nice polka dot pink paper. So I used that as a foundation to layer my embellishments on top of, which I did with these like presents, and then I just added the happy birthday on top, along with that little party hat that says "and many more." And then I added just a simple little embellishment to the top. It was a banner just in that top corner, and I really liked just not overdoing this page. Like, this is the type of page where that photo is really gonna stand out, and so I kind of like that. I really hope you guys enjoyed this week's tutorial, and we will see you next Friday with a new one. Thank you so much for watching.